Hello and welcome back to Mad Mouse Games. Today we're doing something a little bit different, and first of all I want to apologize for not doing anything for such a long time. Life has made me busy, but I plan on getting back into painting and stuff like that when Reaper Bones 6 releases. So be looking for that video when it comes out of me having everything assembled and kind of showing everything off and talking a little about the Kickstarter, and then we'll do some painting and stuff. But today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today we're going to be running through this adventure here, which is from Archmage Press, and this is the free sample version of this book. So this is called The Domain of the Deathless King. Supposedly it's going to be a Kickstarter here in a couple of months, and it's going to be like 5 books that covers levels 1 through 20. It's supposed to be like a full campaign, but the really cool thing about this is that you don't need a DM to play it. I've kind of glanced through it, and it looks like it's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure kind of deal. It looks really interesting, and so I wanted to play through it. So that's what we're going to do today. If this is something you like seeing, hit that like button so I know, and I'll keep making these. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction here. It's got a nice little map with it. And basically, the one thing I'm going to talk about here is creating your party. So when you make a party, you can do all player characters. And this is made for 4 PCs, or a mix of PCs and NPCs. And so what I've done is at the very back of this book there is a list of NPCs that you can have come with you. So I'm going to have this one with me, Nasir the half-elf, this one, Niblet the goblin, and this one, Sassless the lizard folk. So I'm going to be running 3 NPCs and 1 PC because it's just going to be me playing. And then that is how the party creation works. So I think that's really nice because then I only have to make 1 character. But if you're somebody who wants to try out, if you have like a whole bunch of player characters that you haven't gotten to play that you want to try out, you can do 4 of them at the same time and run it as, you know, like a real D&D party, which I think is also very cool. So I'm going to be running it with 3 NPCs and 1 player character. So my player character is going to be a dwarf druid. His name is Torque Firebeard, and I'm just going to go ahead and get started going into the game. The only other thing that I thought was a little bit weird about this was the different battles, which when I have battles, I will kind of explain how that works. So we'll do that when we get to it. But I'm just going to go ahead and get started with everything. It's got pretty simple rules, I think, as far as everything goes. We'll see how it goes, and yeah, ought to be a little bit of fun. I will say this first part is kind of an introduction to like the world and kind of what's going on, and so it's a little bit lengthy, but I'm going to read through it anyways, and then we'll do the adventure. So, you did not mean to stop at Rover's Wend at all. Your party was heading south to explore the forgotten temples of Nerkora when you heard the dreadful news from a traveler. Your homeland of Corridon was under attack. Apparently, the invasion began small, with hauntings and localized raids by bands of rotting skeletons in the outlying farmsteads. Within weeks, legions of undead were marching towards the fortified towns. Each undead legionary whispered the same chant: "The Deathless King will take his home." Unsure what you could do against such odds, you nonetheless marched at full speed toward the capital city of Manilia, determined to offer your services against this threat. Your ration packs were empty by the time you reached the small village of Rover's Wend, and it is there you made an encounter that would change your lives forever. For staying at the Sleeping Lion, the only inn in the village, was no less a figure than the Archmage of Corridon himself, Blasco Ricalso. He too was making his return to the city, and at first you thought to travel with him back to Manilia. Rakasto's eyes lit up when he saw you, however, and it soon became apparent he had a different plan for you. "My friends," he said gravely, the firelight from the hearth illuminating his features, "another sword in Manilia will make no difference. Even I, with all my magical might, can only hold off this force for so long. But a sword in the heart of the Deathless King may make all the difference in the world. No, your journey is not west to Manilia, but east to Delvor, the fortress of the Deathless King himself." You join the Archmage by the fire and press him with questions. Who is the Deathless King? How far is your journey? How can a band of inexperienced adventurers succeed where an Archmage cannot? Rakasso draws upon a pipe and calls for more ale from the worried barkeep. "The Deathless King is no less a figure than Esteban Camacho, founder of the Kingdom of Corridon himself. In his mortal years he ruled long and wisely, establishing a safe and just kingdom in a land overtaken with chaos and marauding monsters. As he aged, he grew fearful, believing that his successors were not worthy of running the kingdom in his absence, and he used many magical potions and artifacts to extend his life. By the time he had turned a century old, even the most powerful magics were failing him, and he sought darker methods to guarantee his rule. He achieved the cursed state of lichdom, of living death, and at that moment realized the foolishness of what he had done. Knowing that he would soon lose all connection to his humanity, he finally allowed his granddaughter to rule in his stead, and exiled himself in distant Eldivor, the great castle he made to protect the eastern border of the land. Unable to die, he vowed to seal himself away forever from the living." Rakasso shakes his head, sipping ale to clear his throat. "Alas, even his iron willpower could not hold off forever. In time, the wicked spirit of the Lich took over, and the Deathless King began to use his sorcery to warp and change the lands of the East. Good people abandoned it, and soon only the wicked-hearted and terrible monsters lived beyond the Beresor Peaks." The Archmage leans closer. "He must be destroyed, both for his own as well as our good. King Esteban would be horrified at the creature he has become. As to why it must be you, alas, I am well known to the Deathless King. He knows my face and will be well prepared for me. The Deathless King will not be expecting a group of unknown adventurers approaching on foot. You will have the element of surprise. As to your inexperience, believe me, after tracking through the Chaos Lands, you shall quickly learn what you are capable of." Rakasso reaches into his robes and produces a map of the East. "Your mission shall see you cross the Pike River and into the bandit-ruled territory of eastern Corridon. Several small villages, which no longer pay fealty to the kingdom, dot the way. Before you reach the slopes of the Beresor Peaks, at the top of the mountains you shall find the last friendly town, the settlement of Eagle's Watch. The Watchmaster is a good friend, and you might consider confiding your mission with him, if you feel it safe to do so. Otherwise, keep your task secret, for spies of the Deathless King have been abroad in the Bandit lands for years. Should the Deathless King know you are coming, your greatest advantage will be spent. Past the mountains, you must wade across the dreadful fire marshes, a perpetually wet inland soaked by the waters of the Kraken Sea to the south. Mount Ignis, a volcano steeped in sorcery and rare materials, will provide the only dry land across the marsh. But beware, for it is the home of giants and worse creatures, and it ever threatens the land with its fiery rivers and clouds of choking ash. Beyond the marshlands, the city of Askay.
I wish I could tell you it was a safe respite for your long travel, but this would be a lie. It is the domain of wicked-hearted men and terrible monsters that live with each other in a tenuous peace. However, you might find an ally there. As far as I know, my colleague, Lena Gendril, still lives somewhere in the city. She's a wild elf and knew the Deathless King when he was still a mortal man. Few know more about the dead king and his territory, for Lena has refused to leave the land she calls home, even as it has fallen to evil. Find her, ask her for aid. She may know of the weaknesses of the Deathless King, and might advise you on how to breach his fortress of Eldivor, as she was one of the original designers of that strange place. Past Escape, you must plunge into the Chaos Wastes themselves, a land so near the Deathless King it has been changed into a jumble of deserts, frozen wastes, jungles, and broken plains. Storms rack the land, and terrible monsters, twisted by the King's sorcery, roam the wastes, wild and flesh-hungry. The remnants of forgotten towns and temples might provide you with some protection from the ever-changing weather, but they are just as likely to hold savage beasts as sanctuary. Lastly, surrounded by a sea of shattered glass, you shall come upon Eldivor itself, says Rokosco, his eyes heavy. No sane creature has ever set foot within its walls for the last 400 years. Breach that terrible fortress and slay the mad monarch within. Hopefully, Lena Gendril will have provided you with the means to overcome him, but by fair means or foul he must be stopped. Destroying him will shatter his undead legions and save our homeland. Rokosco leans back in his chair, tired to his bones. To even state your mission aloud makes it seem impossible, and yet it must be attempted. Be tight-lipped and watch for spies of the enemy. Remain secret, move quickly, be curious, and be strong of heart. Know that the good wishes of Corydon go with you. The party talks long into the night, well after Rokosco has retired to bed. You agonize about whether to accept the mission, but eventually realize there is little choice. You might slay a few skeletons in Manilia, but only by destroying the Deathless King will your land be safe. Resolute, you get a good night's sleep. You have a long journey ahead. Turn if you want. So this is how it's kind of a choose-your-own-adventure. So now we're going to go down to 21 and read what that says. You wake early, the bright summer sun glaring through the cloudy windows of your inn room. Once downstairs, you find that Rokosco has already gone before the dawn. However, he has organized with the innkeeper to provide you with rations for your journey. There isn't much to spare, as many young men and women of Rover's Wend have set off to offer their swords to the army of Corydon, and most preserved food has already been taken. Nonetheless, the innkeeper spares all he can, clapping you on your back in appreciation of your courage. Note you have 2 days of rations for your party. Pool your gold together. You have whatever gold pieces owned by your PCs, plus 10 gold pieces for each NPC in the party. So, Torek Firebeard is a noble. He gets to start with 25 gold, so total I will have 55 gold and 2 days worth of rations for the party. So, another thing about how this works is your rations are always tracked in the amount you have for your party. Another thing is that NPCs don't really carry equipment, so everything is tracked on one sheet, which I really like, actually. And then there's none of this, like, kind of like, I don't want to say in-party fighting, because there's not really a lot of that with gold, I feel like. But everything in one place, I think, makes it a whole lot easier, so I'm all on board for that. A little bit about the party. Again, Torek Firebeard, I decided his background was going to be a noble, so he's a noble from Corydon. And the other 3 NPCs who are with him, Sassless, Nasir, and Niblet, are like his friends that he grew up with.
as a noble, and they've set out to be adventurers before Torek has to go back and take over as a noble. So I just figured that, you know, his parents are like a duke or something for the dwarves. We'll see if there's anything about dwarves in here, and if so, we'll kind of put him into that. But leaving Rover's Wend, you head east, soon coming to the banks of the Pike River. You've heard from the locals there's a bridge crossing the river to the north, but that bandits have begun charging a toll to use it. You might consider following the river a little to the south. Perhaps it will narrow and you can cross safely. Now, if you want to go to the toll bridge, you turn to 17, and if you want to try and go south and find your own crossing, you turn to 108. So I'm actually going to go to 17. I think we're going to go to the toll bridge. Another thing I did, which is not in this booklet, is I did give the NPCs that I'm traveling with a little bit of character. So for example, Nasir, I decided was going to be a very careful kind of person, not necessarily cowardly, but just very careful and wary of going near any kind of danger. Whereas Sassless is very ambitious and wants to make a reputation for himself and for the group. And then Niblet, who is the goblin, is a little bit reckless. Also, all the NPCs will follow Torek if he has an idea, obviously, because he's going to be like the main PC character. But for this case, I think that mainly Sassless would be pushing to go to where the bandits are, because again, he wants to make a name for himself and for the party, and so that's a good way of doing it, is hey, we can, you know, defeat bandits and stuff like that. And I think that Torek would think it would just be a good idea to get rid of bandits on the road for anybody who is there, but we'll see how this goes. So we're gonna go to 17, and that says the bridge soon comes within sight. A decent stone bridge of old Corridon manufacture. It arches over the riverbank, clusters of rushes, waving in the breeze at its base. Unfortunately, the rumor of bandits turns out to be all too true. Swaggering across the bridge, more than half a dozen bandits strut toward you, the leader spitting over the stone railings to demonstrate his contempt. 30 gold pieces to cross the bridge, he grunts, his hand on the hilt of his scimitar. Behind him, several bandits with bows have arrows nocked. Will you pay the bandits' fee? Try to bargain the bandits' fee down? Threaten to kill the bandits if they don't step aside? Or draw your weapons and attack? I think we're gonna try and bargain the fee down. 30 seems like a lot. I only have 55, so that's more than half. So let's try and bargain with them first. So we go to 175. Let's go to 175. 30 gold is outrageous, you cry. We're not even merchants. I'll give you 15, and that's still daylight robbery. Make a DC 10 Charisma Persuasion check. So how checks work in this system is you can choose any of the PCs or NPCs to make this check. And if you have somebody who can like cast guidance, which I do, both Nasir and Niblet can cast guidance, they can do it as well. So I'm going to look through their stats really quickly and see if anybody has any kind of advantage or good skill with persuasion. It looks like every single one of us has a +0 with persuasion. So I'm going to go ahead and let Torek make the roll then, and he is going to be given guidance by Niblet, so he's going to get to roll an extra d4 to add to whatever he rolls. So this is just going to be a straight roll, and go ahead and roll. Looks like I got a 3 + 4, that's 7, which is not enough. So I failed, so we're going to go to number 8. I tell you what, I'll throw in an arrow to your guts, snarls the bandit leader, raising his hand. One of the archers draws back an arrow, threatening. It's 30 gold, no more, no less. And we are going to stop it there for today. If you like the video, please like, comment, and let me know. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, the link is in the description, and we'll see you next time.